welcome to the Foster. I'm Anne Baxter in Palo Alto, California, and I'm Zooming with Tony Foster from his studio in Cornwall, England. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again, Anne.
Today, you'll find me in front of bluebells looking west-northwest near the top of Luxillion Valley, which Tony painted in 2015 for his journey Exploring Beauty, Watercolor Diaries from the Wild. So here we are in the Cornwall section of Exploring Beauty, and you are the luminary. You chose this site as part of the exhibition, and I wonder if you can explain why you chose Cornwall and why you became a luminary.
Well, I suppose having asked all my other luminaries to nominate places all over the world, which they did, I thought at the very least I could be a luminary for my own exhibition. And so I couldn't see why I should rule myself out. And I thought, well, okay, where's the place I think of as the most beautiful in the world? And of course, I realized that was my home. I mean, home is where all my journeys start and finish. And so it's the place where my heart lifts when I return, and I feel slightly sad every time I leave. And so it's the place that means the most to me, of course. And so nobody could dispute the fact that Cornwall is an exceptionally beautiful place, and I'm very privileged to live here. And so I then thought about where are the places in Cornwall that I think are the most beautiful, and I guess they're the places that mean the most to me, which are local and where I visit many, many times, hundreds of times in many cases, thousands in fact, in case of Tyreth Marsh, I should think. I was walking there today, and so it was obvious to me that I would have to have a selection, and this must be it. The thing about the Luxillion Valley, which is so notable, is that for probably 100 years, it was a heavily industrialized place. It was, first of all, I think, used for tin mining, then for copper, and then for granite quarrying, and finally, I think this is the sequence, finally for china clay extraction. And so if you'd come through the valley 100 years ago or 150 years ago, it would have been hell on earth, really. There would have been all sorts of things going on. The place would have looked like a complete wreckage. But then once it was no longer economic to use the place, it was just left alone, and it was owned by the China Clay Company for many, many years. When they finally realized that it was no longer of any use to them, they gave it to the Cornwall Council, to the county council, and it was just left alone. And nature reclaimed the place in the most spectacular and beautiful way, and so it's got substantial trees there now, and just beautiful wildflowers, fantastic bird life, and you can walk around in all sorts of. I mean, it's easy to get lost in Luxillion Valley because there's so many paths going up in different directions, and you constantly discover, the remains of its industrial heritage. And so it's in a way rather a cheering sight, because, as I say, it was hell on earth, and now it's exquisite. There's a chap down there actually who is still streaming for tin. He gets tin by I guess rather like gold panning. He streams for tin, and he made me that little ingot that's there, which is a tin ingot from the Luxillion Valley. But he and a couple of other friends who are geologists provided me with all the little bits of ore and the things that each one is significant really in the Luxillion Valley.
One thing about this artwork that we love is it's such a sign of hope with the beauty, where here it was this mining site, and now it's so glorious with the bluebells and verdant green trees. And was that one of your intended messages?
It was, and it's something I always think of when I go to the Luxillion Valley, just what a wonderful place it is, despite its history in a way. And of course, I mean, its history goes back a long way. It's got glaciated boulders that were left there when the glaciers retreated after the last ice age. So it's got a huge history really, and the human dent that's been made on it in a way enhances the place, because you walk through the path at the bottom of the valley, and you come across this enormous ruined clay dry. It's a huge construction, and it's just become part of the landscape.
Now I have seen bluebells in England, and they are so just everywhere when they're in bloom. It's just like a
Mm,
whole carpet of
yeah,
purpley blue. It's beautiful.
yeah.
And I notice they do have a kind of a short high season too. So
Mm.
that I think is shown, judging by the dates of this artwork, that you painted it 1 year and then you had to go back
Yeah,
to
exactly. I
finish.
had to leave it a year because I hadn't got enough information. I hadn't got it close enough to finished. And so I just left it and then went back a year later when the bluebells were out again, and in order to get that as good as I could.
So in addition to Luxillion Valley, there are other locations close to home that you painted that are in this Cornwall area. One that I think it almost gets overlooked is 3 ways to describe plant life. 3 wildlife observations, Towardworth Marsh looking south. Could you describe your experiences painting this artwork and why the chosen souvenirs?
What it is, the in a way, I thought the painting itself, of course, is one way of describing plant life. The study of the flag iris, which is their little flower there, the flag irises come out in about May, I suppose, and they light up the marsh like little spotlights throughout the marsh. They're lovely. So there's that the flag iris, and it's a study of a flag iris, and so that's describing plant life in a more specific way. And then those little bits of pottery there, if you look closely, they have got flowers on them, and those bits of pottery I found in the marsh, and I thought that's interesting. That's a strange, that's a very schematic way of describing plants. Really, they're simply decoration on the side of a bit of plate or something.
Yeah.
And I found those down in the marsh, and they were probably somebody in the 19th, early this century, or early last century, I should say, was having his dinner down there and broke his plate and just left
Oh,
it
yeah.
there. And I just thought, well, that's really a nice way to think of the way we approach describing plants, really. So that's why I put those things together.
More souvenirs. The periwinkle shells souvenirs in your 2 coast paintings here are some of the favorite elements in the artworks that people see when they first enter the exhibition.
Yeah.
And people aren't supposed to touch the artworks, but I notice often little fingerprints where they're touching.
Oh, really?
Like, are those real? And people often ask, like, do you dye the shells? They're lined up in a beautiful spectrum from like bright yellow to deep purpley brown.
Mm.
Tell us about the shells and how you
Yeah.
found them.
Well, no, I do not dye them, and I don't color them. I don't pencil on them. I don't do anything to them. I simply find them, and I find them on one particular beach, it's the only beach I know where you can find them. You can find odd colors in different places, but I've never ever found a different beach where you can get the entire spectrum.
Ah.
And it does take some doing. The orange ones are very difficult to find, actually, but they're the rarest. The yellow ones are very common, and the dark ones are very common too. But the orange ones are very difficult to find. And so I come back with a huge bag full of periwinkle shells. Of course, they're all, the periwinkles have died and left them. So I don't kill them. I don't kill them in order to get the shells. I only take ones that have been abandoned. And I arrange them as best I can into a perfect spectrum, which is it's sort of a bit of fun, really. But it is astonishing, and I have pondered on why the periwinkles have that extraordinary range of color. It's just, what advantage can it be to them to have all those colors? It's the only shell I know that you can find that. And is it what they eat? Is it who knows? I have no idea.
Another small painting here, the sensitive close look at all the elements of the hedge in the spring.
It was actually done on my way back from painting the bluebells in Luxillion Valley. On my walk home, I spotted this and I thought, oh, you could do a lovely little study of that. And one day I just went out and did a study on it, and it wasn't for any specific purpose, really. I just thought how lovely it was, and whether I could get that kind of extraordinary fecundity, really, and just the variety of wild flowers you can find in a very tiny space in Cornish hedges at the right time of year. And it is one of the great wonders of Cornwall really to find those things. And people drive past very fast and don't notice. But if you stop and look, it's just astonishing, just what there is in a small space. And so it was just really, it was just something that struck me when I was walking back from painting that big painting. And I thought, well, in a way, that little tiny painting says almost as much about spring in Cornwall. So yeah.
You have painted so many greens and lots of growth in the marsh too. I think you'd commented before that you painted in the marsh in preparation for going to the rainforest to try and get that depth.
Yeah. And because before I went to the rainforest, I mean, quite a few of my pals, and also Peter Fairbanks, my then art dealer in San Francisco, said, well, Tony, what the hell is it to paint in a rainforest? It's just going to be like wallpaper, like green wallpaper. And that really worried me. I thought, good grief, yeah, I've had this idea and I've got to see if it would work. And so I thought, well, the nearest thing I know to a rainforest is Tyredreth Marsh. And so I went down there and did quite a big painting, in fact, and it worked out pretty well. And so I realized that if I could paint the marsh, which is nothing but trees and green and water, then probably the rainforest, might not be too much different to that.
What were painting takeaways? Like, what technique or thoughts did you take from painting in the marsh and apply to painting in the rainforest?
I suppose the realization that you can't paint every stick and leaf, that you have to concentrate on some things to get the form of them right. So they certainly give the impression of that kind of overall density of vegetation. But on the other hand, it still has to work as a painting. I mean, Peter was right. It could easily be green wallpaper. And so it has to have the same thing, the same sort of formal things that any painting would have, which is it has to have a sense of distance. It has to have a sense of the actual quality of the place itself. And it has to have something to focus your eye on.
Well, thank you for your time, Tony, and for sharing your wonderful talents as a storyteller and artist with us.
You're very welcome. Nice to see you again, Anne.